Hello, yes, greetings, people of the internet. Uh, I I don't want my neighbors to know that I'm talking to myself. So I tried to make a video a few times recently about uh, one of my oldest and closest friends, who I've known since high school, with whom I had an anti-suicide pact that we made after a mutual friend committed suicide in 2010. Broke that pact earlier in August, and but I don't want to give very many details about that. I don't think that it is respectful. I don't think that he would want me to. So the thing that I want to talk about is I hear the sentiment a lot in regards to when people talk about violent crime, specifically like mass shootings or murder, and usually violent crime that people don't understand and want to separate themselves from in conversation. People will say, well, anybody who does that is mentally ill, or this person who committed this crime must have been mentally ill, otherwise they wouldn't have done it. And as a mentally ill person, this bothers me, and I bring it up in conjunction. I have a splinter of some sort. I bring this up in conjunction with the news about my friend because one of this friend struggled with mental illness. I'm not going to get too much into it. As I said, I don't think he would want me to, but he struggled a lot with mental illness. He did not want to be seen that way because of the stigma. Oh, I see what's going on as a sticker. Because of the stigma that exists, and because you definitely know some people who are mentally ill and who just haven't told you. And when you say that people who commit violent crime, whether it be mass murder or other kinds of murder or any sort of violent crime, are mentally ill, not only are you perpetuating some really damaging stigmas about the mentally ill, but you're also just wrong. The people who struggle with mental illness are far more statistically likely to be the victims of violent crime than the perpetrators of violent crime, by like a lot. So there's that. And then, like, I do understand that people want to separate themselves from stuff like murder. And it makes sense when you're talking about this, like, aberrant, monstrous behavior that you do not understand. If you're not mentally ill, it can be very tempting to write it off as an act of mental illness. Largely because our knee-jerk reaction is to dissociate ourselves from it. We want everybody to know that we don't understand why somebody would do this, and that we understand that it is aberrant. However, it's statistically not the case. Have a boogeyman in their mind of a psychotic psychopath, as though those two things are interchangeable or synonymous, which they're not. But they assume that anybody who commits a violent act is divorced from reality, is not sane. I would encourage anybody who believes this to look into the psychological interviews conducted with members of the SS, who worked day to day in concentration camps, who were not only around death constantly, but also committing acts of violence, committing widespread acts of murder, genocide, etc. If I recall correctly, none of them showed signs of mental illness. In fact, I mean, of course they didn't. One of the first demographics that the Nazis exterminated, was the mentally ill. So, and there were other factors with my friend. However, I know a lot of people I have a lot of good friends who have suffered from the kinds of mental illnesses that are often blamed for things like murder. I talk about mass shooting a lot I mention it a lot because that is one of the most frequent circumstances in which I hear somebody say, anybody who does that is mentally ill. Of course he was mentally ill. He shot a bunch of people. No. Hold on. But even with the most egregious diagnoses, particularly like antisocial personality disorder, schizophrenia, bipolar type 1, like the disorders that people generally think about as behind violence, the Diagnostic Statistics Manual does not mention violence in any diagnosis as a criteria or as a symptom, while antisocial personality disorder specifically talks about disregard for the rights of others and disregard for social norms and laws and rules. That doesn't necessitate violence. And I mean, people who suffer from delusions, they have it so fucking difficult already. Think about the media portrayals that you see of all of the, like, boogeymen in horror movies or whatever that just use mental illness and being crazy as a motive, as though that makes sense or ever happens. I think one of the reasons that I think now I'm thinking about, like, the famous serial killers, which has been, a niche interest of mine. I can't think of any serial killers except maybe Richard Chase, who definitely suffered from a mental illness that they were diagnosed with that actively contributed to the crimes that they committed. Jeffrey Dahmer was fucking lonely and had circumstances that irreversibly crossed the wires that associated violence and sexual feelings in his brain. Almost all serial killers have massive head trauma early in their life, but we don't talk about talk about how anybody who commits mass murder has a brain injury, and that I kind of assume that seems bad to say, because lots of people have brain injuries who don't kill people and aren't violent. And the same goes for the mentally ill, statistically even more so. And my friend would probably still not be here if this were not the case. However, the massive stigma that comes with accepting a diagnosis like this, specifically one of the more stigmatized diagnoses that people often associate with violence, it's hard enough. People who suffer from schizophrenia or any condition that causes delusions or psychosis are already massively targeted for sexual assault in hospital settings, and the reason that they are so frequently targeted is that the people who target them know that nobody will believe them. And they're right. And it's a fucking shame. So, as much, as much as I'd like to talk about stuff that mentally ill people do and feel and think, this one's on y'all. It's not us that's hurting people. It's not us that's shooting up schools. It's not us committing murder. More frequently, it is us being murdered. So, I just wanted to say that real quick. And then, in a sort of lighthearted update, I am reporting to y'all from the apartment that I have been living in. Not original, but one thing I did that is original that I want to share with you guys is, so this is the design that has been on my business cards and stickers so far, but it's not an original design. I just got it on Zazzle. I don't know. But this is the logo that I've been wanting to use I've known that I wanted to use the design for a long time. And I think that this is going to be the final, draft that goes on the business cards. But I'm not sure. But I'm still really excited about that. And every month I'm hitting record profits. Check out Widdershins Goods if you like spell bottles. I'm really surprised.